Page, got that? All right.
Okay, I have a couple open discussions when you're ready. Go ahead. The first one is a new policy. Actually, I was speaking to stakeholders. I got several new policies. Let's do the first one first. This is a board policy under section 000, board procedures, code 002-1. And it's the title would be the balanced budget. Under the legal parameters, I have 9 stating school code 601, 602, 3, 8, 10, 13, 624, 518, and 321, which is the district's oath of office. The authority under the policy, the authority to create and adopt a local government school budget for the Lehighton Area School District is vested in the Board of School Directors, which is a body corporate and is constituted and governed by Title 24 of the Pennsylvania statutes.
Do you have copies of this?
Yeah, I will. The applicable federal and state laws and regulations apply. Numbers 1 through 9, or just state apply. Powers. The board, in meeting with obligations set forth in Pennsylvania School Code, shall establish a budget that projects the income and expenditures of the district. Pretty standard. Each individual board member, will have the responsibility to provide direct and active oversight during the creation of the budget. The budget will be balanced. A balanced budget is further defined in this policy as planned expenditures not to exceed planned revenues for any given budget cycle. And then it goes on to say, 2 presentations of the budget will be provided to the public. Let me finish. I'm going to read, just like you did at the executive session, I'm going to read it.
Well, we have copies from Mrs.
We'll get to it. Yeah, I'll give it to her.
Okay.
So 2 presentations of the budget will be provided to the public. The first will be published in a manner consistent with the statutory accounting principles detailed in the NIAC Accounting Practices and Procedures Manual and the state format. The second is using the same numbers, will be provided in a single-page format common to household budgets. The second format will show the tax revenues from the expected source organized into the following reporting format. Tax revenue, and then it'll be local real estate, local income, other local taxes, state, federal, interest received, and then other sources. The categories for reporting the expenditures will be grouped into 5 sections with following subcategories. The first one will be overhead, and you'll list power, fuel, maintenance staff, maintenance supplies, subcontractors, miscellaneous, debt payments to principal, and debt payments to interest. The administration, their staff, supplies, and miscellaneous. The teaching staff, salaries, tax liabilities for the staff, medical benefits, pensions, obligations, substitute teachers, teacher's aid, and classroom supplies. Transportation, daily bus and additional transportation, and the 5th will be other. In the creation stage of this budget, the board may consider to use the Act 1 tax increase limit if the following criteria are met. Public access is arranged for the review of the budget and access to the Pennsylvania School Code 518 documents. Pennsylvania School Code 518 documents are to be made available to the public for a minimum of 8 hours a day for 4 days, including at least 1 Saturday and 1 Sunday. Number 2, the public meeting is arranged for the review of the mandated educational benefits and optional educational benefits scheduled to be provided to the community. The powers of the Board of School Directors are not to be abdicated to the administration, but accepted as part of the duty to act with fidelity on behalf of the stakeholders. That goes back to the Pennsylvania School Code's responsibility. And cooperation with the subordinate administration, a balanced budget will be presented to the stakeholders for their review and input at least 1 month prior to the board's scheduled adoption. So that's the one I'd like to have. added to this to you, Missy? I'll get it, that's fine. Thank you. Does anybody have a concern about adding a balanced budget policy to our districts?
The policy would change the whole budget process according to your recommendation, correct?
Correct. It's going to change the budget process to meet Pennsylvania School Code, which requires the elected board to oversee the creation of the budget. And then anytime it's going to be greater than a balanced budget or greater than the existing current budget for the year prior, meaning you're going to use part of your Act 1 increase, you're going to ask for a tax increase. Prior to asking for a tax increase, we're going to provide the stakeholders with lawful transparency to make sure they understand how and why the budget's being created the way it's being created. Because it's our responsibility as a board to create the budget for the benefit of the stakeholders. They've elected us to do it. We should do it. Does anybody have a problem with adopting a balanced budget policy?
Not when it's not,
Go ahead.
unless it's legally reviewed.
It has to be. We can't adopt it until it's done. It
No,
still has to be a balanced
I
budget.
mean, it has to be reviewed by an attorney.
What does?
This,
The policy.
yeah.
Oh, sure. Why wouldn't you? But the question is, does anybody object to having, I mean, we all talk
I
about.
object to the
federal-
wording that you had in that document, so I would like to have that document put on for next month's reading by the policy committee and reviewed.
I just read it. So
No, I'm not gonna go by what you read.
I just read it.
No, I don't agree with that,
Why not?
because I don't trust you.
I agree.
You don't trust me what I read?
No.
So why did you allow Mr. Cleaver to read you a agreement inside of an executive session and never got a copy? I'm just asking.
Mr. Bradford, it has nothing to do with that part.
I think
Mr.
my-
Stern.
No, I think the
I think the
fidelity of Mr.
document
Cleaver
that
is
I-
a little bit more than the fidelity
Yeah,
of
I
Ms. Nina
think the
Pugh.
document I read was reviewed by our school solicitor who was sitting here in that meeting before it was even read.
But the board didn't read it. We don't have to trust you to read what you read. But that's fine, I do have a copy of it, we gave it to Melissa. It's been read into the policy committee. My question is bigger, not the language, the idea. Does this board committee that recommends to the board, it's a board committee, do we feel we should obligate by policy our board and boards moving forward to adopt either a balanced budget, or if you're gonna need more money, we're gonna seek the stakeholders' input first? Should we self-inflict the responsibility of having a balanced budget for our board and every board moving forward? That's the first hurdle that you kind of have to go through before you worry about language. It's a concept.
I mean,
Can we recommend to the board that a policy be adopted?
No, maybe after we read it next month, maybe we'll bring it forward.
you're
But
also
I'm gonna read
requesting
that.
something for the finance committee that should be reviewed too by the
Right.
finance committee. not
This is
just
policy first. Do we as a policy committee, our responsibility is to recommend policy. Are we going to recommend a policy that requires a balanced budget to be submitted, and in lieu of that balanced budget, criteria that allows for the stakeholders to have input prior to mandating tax increases or consumptions?
You present
At-
a
at-
budget that it could be adjusted.
No, I'm not, at the point we're at with where we have been for the last 4 years, and I think the misrepresentation that occurred, I can't adopt the policy at that point like that.
What misrepresentation occurred?
That we were spending more than we were told, and we were consistently running over the budget.
100% our
But
responsibility.
it was in.
That's all I did.
When you read the budgets over the last 4 years, that was obvious.
Yeah. The budgets were actually
No,
looking to
the
spend.
budgets were balanced.
No, they were not. They're
No,
balanced
they were
using the
not.
general fund.
Wait, I'm not gonna stand here and argue
They're
because
balanced with
No,
the-
wait.
the information that was presented at the last finance meeting showed that the budgets were set at $40-some million, and there was 40-some, $1 or $2 or $3 million spent.
Just a second.
So you can make a budget and put it in a box, and it doesn't matter if you particular balanced budget as long as you live to it.
Right, which is
Right.
my responsibility.
Which I think is more of the problem that we have because of the past years with balances, the budget, we're close to balance. The process was to burn down the fund balance. Now, not at the rate that it occurred. Now we're talking about finance and the policy meeting.
Yeah, I would wait, I would refer everything to the finance committee.
If you-
Well, I'm asking wait, my question is very philosophical. Should the policy committee recommend to the board the responsibility to have a control, a policy of this district, that any government, any board is going to be required to provide a balanced budget. And if they're going to ask for a tax increase, that they're going to have to ask the people first and show them what we've been doing.
We present to the board a budget. If the board wishes to have whatever budget that may be, the board would make the recommendation to us of areas we would need to cut or, or to eliminate or to, cut back in.
But
That's
you
part of the
don't,
budget process.
but as an administration, it's not your responsibility to create a budget. You agree with that?
No, it is our responsibility to create a budget.
Absolutely.
We present a budget to the board. It's the board's responsibility to either accept or not accept the budget as presented, or to make recommendations and tell the administration to go back and revise based upon, other things.
The creation of the budget is very well defined in school code as the board's responsibility.
Again, we're going to agree to disagree because
Why would you
your
disagree?
interpretation
Under what?
of school code and mine are probably two different interpretations.
Okay,
And
so-
there's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
Good,
it's just-
let's find out. Under lawful authority, under what lawful authority do you feel that the administration is responsible for the creation and adoption of a budget?
We're not adopting the budget.
Excellent. So the creation of a budget.
Correct.
Okay.
We're making a recommendation based upon a document that we were creating and presented, and through that creation
Show
could
me.
be changes, could be discussion at the finance committee meetings, that could be part of that document until it is finally presented as a final document to the board.
Well, show me where, or bring to this board, in your interpretation, as you said, it could be a series of interpretations, where you find in school code anywhere that the administration has any responsibility for the creation of the first draft of any budget. Could you do that for us, please?
I'm still not even, I'm not even.
Okay, what would be your next policy, Mr. Evans?
I will, but let's
No, let's ask,
Under
let's
what
move on.
At this
Under what
point,
lawful authority do you think
at this
that-
point,
what's
unless
your next
I direct
policy,
the
Mr.
budget
Bradley?
to the board, the way we are presenting the budget and working with the.
I understand, I want to change that, that's why we're here.
Well, that's fine, but I'm just telling you.
You used a statement, your statement was, you said, it's my interpretation of school code. So I feel that the budget is, the responsibility for the budget, the creation and the adoption falls solely on the board. That's my statement. You feel that that's a false statement.
No, half of that I feel is.
Okay, so let's just use creation. So I will make the
We don't-
statement that the
we
board is
present-
responsible for the creation of the budget.
The administration presents the information.
The first draft, that's what it's called.
Right, so we present that to the board.
So then who creates the first draft?
Again, it's presented.
It seems to me that the numbers create the first draft.
Yeah, the
Because
numbers.
if we have to spend X amount for salaries and X amount for benefits that we are
That's
obligated to do under contract, if we have to spend X amount under transportation, which again, we contract to do, if we have to spend X amount for IEP situations and whatever has to happen, and for other classrooms that we have to put in, and for all sorts of programs that we want our kids to take advantage of, those are the numbers that dictate a budget. It doesn't, nobody gets to create the budget. The budget is created by the needs of the district. That's my feeling.
And presented. Just
So when
because
you-
we present something doesn't mean it needs to be adopted, doesn't mean that it will be adopted.
Right, the board has a responsibility to correct the course. So you said the word have to a lot. Under what lawful authority do you have to do these things?
Contract,
Negotiations, okay.
contract liabilities.
Right, so who negotiates the board's contract with the employees? Who do you have assigned to negotiating that?
What does that have to do with it? We're talking
Well,
about
we're back
contracts
to the
that are in
budget.
place.
We're back on.
See, now we're going, but, yeah, we just,
Yeah.
do you have a next, do you have a next
Papers are
policy,
clean.
Mr. President?
I do. So
Okay, well, let's move on
Let's
to that,
move on to
sir.
that one.
Please, let's move on to it,
No.
sir.
I will.
No, you won't. Please move on to it, sir.
I will.
No,
I will, I'm moving on, we'll skip the whole negotiation. Let me just explain something to you from a big picture view, very big picture. A plane crashes in Madrid.
come on.
Right?
Come on, come on, no.
It's not part of
We're not playing-
policy.
no,
Give
we're not
us your
playing the
second
game.
policy. Let's
No.
go. Move
And it was very interesting how you moved your seat once you wanted to make your speech.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, because otherwise nobody sees you at the policy meeting. So I just want to make sure, maybe that's cut out of the thing that'll be posted, I'm sure.
Right.
You know, you came and sit and, you know, in between Mr. Cleaver and Mrs. Spinelli, just for the common knowledge that you
I'm
get.
trying to compromise. I'm trying to
You're not
get you
trying
guys
to compromise at all. You don't compromise. You know, Mr. Bradley, I think you should sometimes listen to how you speak to people, and maybe you would appreciate if you would like to be spoken to that way. Maybe that's how you like to be spoken to. Most of the people in our community don't appreciate being spoken to or written to the way you present yourself. There's a lot of things you could probably learn from a presentation perspective, you know? Maybe that would help our whole organization for you to be less critical and more constructive. You bring up past practice of things that have happened 4 or 5 years ago that none of us really had anything to do with, and you consistently blare that out. I don't bring anything up about what you maybe did 4 or 5 years ago. But I think the whole purpose of what we're trying to do is move this district forward. Your interpretation of those and how you add your flair of subordinate administration to emails that go out to who knows wherever they are, because we really don't know the names. So they go out to the Times News, they go out to other places. You know, I don't know how they appreciate that type of tone. But really, it's getting to the point where that tone is really getting old. So that's my statement. I think we should move on to your next policy. And Ms. Wagner will put this together and we'll read it at the next meeting and see where we go with it.
Excellent. Thank you for your input.
I appreciate what you're trying to do.
Good. So let me
But
explain.
maybe, again, let's think about how you're presenting yourself.
Agreed. Let me explain how things are presented so you can better understand it.
Now, see, right there you
I'm
go
gonna tell you,
again.
I'm segueing.
You're talking down to me
I'm
just
not.
because you think you can.
I'm
You know what?
not.
We're almost to the
I'm
point
not.
where the meeting's going to end if
I
you don't move on to your next,
Yes,
so
I
next
agree.
topic.
So we
I'm
have,
going to adjourn if you don't give us your next policy.
okay, good for you. So the question is, here's the 3 that they have that they were provided, but you have to understand how a government works a little bit, and give me the 30-second latitude, okay?
You say the same thing over and over.
I'm not saying this is brand new, you've never heard
They
it.
were
You've
saying
never heard it, so just bear with me.
I
Be
better
patient.
not have.
Good, we'll see if it's new to you. If it's, I will concede, if this is not new to you, or you've ever heard me say this before, I will help you at the meeting.
Get to it.
Thank you. So, I'm a business person, we make business decisions based upon facts. I also happen to be a pilot, and pilots learn from other pilots' mistakes. There was a crash in Madrid 10 years ago, right? The co-pilot was right at the time. But he died because, and all of them died, right? Because when the co-pilot asked questions, he implied suggestions were very weak. The captain's reply was to ignore him totally. Perhaps the co-pilot did not want to appear rebellious, questioning the judgment of the captain, or he did not want to play the fool because he knew that the pilot had a great deal of experience flying in the area. The co-pilot should have advocated for his own opinions in a stronger way to save.
You're reading the story off the stone.
I am.
Yeah, you're reading the story, so it's really
I
not
want to make sure it's
personal that you have.
in a stronger way
Personal input.
to save those passengers. That excerpt was written in an NTSB report governing the safety of aircraft more than 10 years ago. And since then, the aviation industry has greatly improved its ability to protect. The same way I like us to protect our students and protect the financial stability of this district. It might sound rebellious to question why someone didn't do anything, or why 5 years ago they did something. But in reality, that questioning brings about change in the benefit of the district. So I will move on to my policy, because I guarantee no one heard that before. If you want to cancel this meeting, that's fine, but I have 3 items. Right? Would you like to move on, or have you heard it before?
Just, if you could summarize them, please?
Yes. If
this
they're
short.
small, they're small.
Thank you. All right, the first one was from a constituent that said their version of the balanced budget, which they also saw was important, was that the board is responsible for the stewardship of taxpayers' money, will task the administration with providing an outline for a balanced budget for review by the appropriate subcommittee and approval by the board as a whole no later than 2 months prior to the budget deadline.
So these notes are in support of your first policy.
Now, this is another,
And is
I'm
this,
passing forward.
who is this
Con-
stakeholder?
Consequences, consequences, failure to provide a balanced budget outline by the required date will result in immediate termination of both the superintendent and business administration. So this person looks for
And who
consequences.
is this person? You gotta tell me who it is or I'm not gonna pay attention. I'm like a newspaper. If I don't have a name, I don't give it credence.
So
Okay.
you understand that that's
Okay.
an ad hominem, you understand the argument that you're trying to make.
Who's the person?
Do you understand that?
Who's the person?
It doesn't matter. What's your next one, please?
Next. No board member who is directly related to or married to an employee of the district shall hold either the presidency of the board or the chairmanship of the committee
Ridiculous.
under the jurisdiction of the board. Consequences, if a board member is found in violation of policy,
This is
immediate
not-
removal from the board is necessary.
Okay.
To adjourn.
I motion, second motion to adjourn,
Wait.
meeting's over.
We're done.
In the last 5 years,
We're done.
you had,
Mr. Brown,
You-
we have
you
had
have-
this discussion over and over and over
let's
again.
go through the list. It's David Kraus,
It's
it's,
not no law.
We don't appoint them, they are elected. If they choose to serve, they're elected.
but not as, they don't have to be the committee chair. You're blocking it. You're blocking this communication right now.
Thank you.
Just because you're white folks from the district, you're allowed to
Just
block.
just because she was here before I was here.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
David Kraus
because.
had his wife, and Rocky Iron had his wife.
Oh, yeah, it just runs rampant. What do I do? You know?
You shouldn't be a chair of a meeting, that's
Yeah,
everything.
maybe it has to be residency that you're born in Lehighton to be on
That's
the
only be
board.
on the board, I'm not talking about being,
How
I'm
about that?
talking about being a committee member.
I would like to do that. I would like to say anybody from outlying districts shouldn't be allowed to be on the board unless they've been here for 30 years.
So do you want the third one or do you want to?
No.
All right, do you want to protect the children, Larry? Because the next one is protecting the children, Larry. Why didn't you cut now before we protect the
Because
children,
your
Larry?
first two were ridiculous.
Why don't you protect the children?
Ridiculous.
This is the age of the kids that are injured in our district. Right? Because of lack of supervision, sir. Can you leave the light on, sir? I'd like to be safe getting out. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. All of them. Let me in. Thank you. Good morning. Be aware, the information collected on behalf of the district stakeholders may not have been properly published for your review. Because